If you don't understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will confuse you. That's a guarantee. That's not optional.
All right, good evening and welcome back to another episode of Politics, Economics, the Struggle to Survive in America. And I'm your host, my name is Jerrald President. And in Politics, Economics, and the Struggle to Survive in America, what I like to delve into is historical figures, the policies that's implemented in the United States of America and globally through the white supremacist system, and just what happens on the everyday struggle living in America. Now, today I'm going to go back as a flashback, and I just want you to listen to how Martin Luther King Jr. broke down what it's like to be a descendant of a slave. And it's not to belittle people who have immigrated to America, because while we're on this journey towards reparations, it's important and it's imperative for us to understand there was only one group of people in America that were slaves. They was held in bondage for 267 years. And I'm going from their own documented history of 1619. That's when the British touched down. We're not talking about when Spain or France was here or the Dutch. Specifically from when the British touched down to Jamestown, 1619. Now, I want you to listen closely, because right now we have the Democratic presidential nominees and they get ready to have a debate coming up. And they're pushing the agenda of immigration. And I want you to listen to explicitly to what Martin Luther King Jr. says in regards to descendants of slaves. Okay? Now just pay attention and listen real close.
What is it about the Negro? I mean, every other group that came as an immigrant somehow, not easily, but somehow got around it. Is it just the fact that Negroes are black?
White America must see that no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil. That is one thing that other immigrant groups haven't had to face. The other thing is that the color became a stigma. American society made the Negro's color a stigma. America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land or nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps, but it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading.
Very powerful, wasn't it? Extremely powerful. He articulated exactly why they killed him. See, when he understood that it was economics, and he understood that we was a landless class of people who had been held in bondage for 244 years and tacked on another 100 years of legal segregation, or in famous words of the Supreme Court Justice or Supreme Court, de jure segregation. It was implicit that the United States would make sure that we was always a bottom class. So when you hear me talk about immigration, it's not directed towards you. I know why the United States, I know why these white men brought you over here. It was to push us to the back. But you have to understand, in our journey and our quest for full repair, reparations. You cannot get in our way. You cannot get in our way. It is a specific claim for us, which is why how Martin Luther King broke it down was so brilliant. Now just imagine, this was in the 1960s. Just remember, 2 years later after this, he was assassinated. If I'm correct, I think this was a year before he was assassinated. You created what was called the Louisiana Purchase. Not only reason you got that land was because what the Haitians did to the French. But we're going to stay on this topic. And you gave free land to European white men, or who became citizens in America, while you explicitly forbid us from participating in this quest. Now, you also have to understand, 98% of all the land in America, agricultural land, is in the hands of these same individuals. Me, on the other hand, my family, on the other hand, and others like me, we have not been able to participate in that, which means we don't have control of the resources on this planet, that's on this land that we walk on the North American continent, the alleged North American continent. So in order for us to move forward, we have to have, or you need to just break bread with us and just break us off and give us the money. Because as we continue down this journey, here it is 2019, we get ready to turn the chapter to 2020. And as you see, the Democrats falling over themselves, running away from dealing with a specific agenda towards black folks, not student debt relief. That's just a red herring. That's just to make sure you lift off the burden for the banks. That's all that is. That's a banker's ploy. We still are a wealthless class because we have no control of assets. And it bothers me more than anything because so many young black men and women are very impressionable. And you have black people that get on these, the YouTubes, and they talk about how you too can become rich in the real estate game and all that other stuff. We don't control the land that we walk on. The minerals and the rights to those minerals, we can never possess. We can never possess. So those few black folks that get on these screens and they tell you that you can get rich in the real estate scheme, because I've been noticing. I'm watching now on the Breakfast Club. I'm watching the Jay Morrisons of the world. I'm watching the T.I.s of the world. I'm watching all these individuals push this game on the people. A few of us will make some bread in it. That's what capitalism is all about. It's in the hands of the few, and it controls the means of production. That's the capitalist game. That's the white man's game. And always remember, the capitalism started on the backs of our ancestors being brought from the continent of Africa and exported across that Atlantic Ocean. So when you hear these individuals come on and pontificate about you can get in this game, you can do the tax liens and all that, that's bull game. You still don't control the mineral rights underneath your feet, which the United States government controls all of that. And they use the levers of the Supreme Court and the legislative system in America to make sure that we don't participate in it, which is why it's important that you pay attention and read and listen to the book Color of Law. And you understand what de jure segregation is. You go back to after we was freed in 1865 with the 13th Amendment, the ratification of the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, then the 15th Amendment. We had access to this property, the Freedmen's Bureau. Last 2 years ago, me and my son, we did an episode on the Freedmen's Bureau. And you have to understand, this power structure, the white supremacist power structure, made sure that we did never participate in that. They knew what they was doing. The only people don't know is us, which is why it's important and imperative that we educate ourselves on these topics. We have to. We're in the midst right now of them doing another land grab. We are in the midst, and they call it gentrification. It's not gentrification. They've always displaced us in America. They just always come up with a fancy term. That's all they use, fancy terms. They cobbled us together during the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s in our little enclaves through the Federal Housing Administration. And before then, we was coming out of slavery. What was we once again? Pushed off to the side. The land that we did have, they came away with using quitclaim deeds, or some black man raped some white woman, and now all you black folks, Rosewood, Durham, North Carolina, Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It goes on and on. You come up with these excuses to get white men who don't have anything and to make them think that by pushing us out, they're going to get wealth. When it was always a small group of individuals who used these illiterate and ignorant white men because they felt they was better than us because of their complexion to come kill us and take the land that was rightfully ours. For those that want to claim Indian ancestry or Native American ancestry, always remember the reason why you are on that part in Oklahoma, Texas, because the 5 civilized tribes was forced out. And it was forced. And they was allowed to take their slaves. Yes, those 5 so-called civilized tribes, Native American tribes, owned slaves because they got down with the founders, the alleged founders, and they owned slaves. They owned us. So that's why a lot of us have Native American in our DNA. Not to say that we wasn't here before then, but always for the purposes of what I'm talking about. I'm going from 1619 because everything else we weren't allowed to write because we didn't know the language. So whatever history we had is passed down. So what I'm talking about is specifically and explicitly from their text. We was part of that trail of tears. That's how we ended up over there. And it was because of the Dawes Act. Now all this I'm talking about, as usual, I'm going to put it on the screen so you can do your own research and understand that under the Dawes Act, that was part of ours. We're supposed to have that. And as usual, who gets pushed to the back? It's us. So right now we're in the midst of pushing people out, especially poor blacks, out of the cities. Why? Same reason why they wanted that land after the Civil War, because it was beneficial for them, which is why the banks are the most egregious and the detriment to all of us, because they make sure that our homes don't have any value. So that's still following that pattern of redlining to make sure our homes and the communities we live in have no value. Now, I'm going to end this off again. The reason I'm going to end it off my show again, I'm sorry, I just wanted to give you just a little piece today, you know? And I want you to understand, if you listen closely what Martin Luther King says, it is so important that we continue to keep pushing forward. And don't think because we have a piece of paper on our wall that says we have a master's degree or a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree, that means anything. We have all the education that our ancestors never had, and we still have zero wealth. So, once again, it's politics, economics, the struggle to survive in America. Peace.
What is it about the Negro? I mean, every other group that came as an immigrant somehow, not easily, but somehow got around it. Is it just the fact that Negroes are black?
White America must see that no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil. That is one thing that other immigrant groups haven't had to face. The other thing is that the color became a stigma. American society made the Negro's color a stigma. America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land or nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps. But it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading.